rolling out with the break of dawn. Canvas skies and the show goes on. Iron stakes and the hammer sound, building dreams on this muddy ground. With sawdust running through our veins, we do it for the faces in the crowd. Step right up with R&B, 'cause this ain't just a show, it's circus history.
Howdy, everyone, and welcome to Off the Rail Podcast, your podcast for everything circus. We're your off the rail ringmasters. I'm R. This is B. How you doing,
Hey, how's
B?
it going, R?
Doing wonderful. Today's sponsor is Wolf O Inc. Sorry, I keep messing that up. You'll find more about that in the description below. And today's guest is a very special guest. We have Father Frank. He was in charge of making sure we were spiritually taken care of while we were out on the rails. Father Frank, how are you doing?
I'm good. Only I don't want that responsibility. I'm doing good, thanks.
Perfect. I was wondering, Father, if before we get this party started, if you could lead us in a quick prayer.
Sure, happy to. So let's pray. God of love and compassion, we give you thanks for the many ways you've always expressed your presence among us, whether it has been on the rails, in a tent, in conversations with people, and in entertainment. So we ask that you bless our conversation today and let us see your face present in the many different realities that we discuss, and continue to bless us with a glimpse of that presence in everything that we do and in everything that we are. And we ask this trusting in your name. Amen.
Nomine Patris Filii
Amen.
Spiritus Sanctus. Amen.
All right, that was beautiful. All right, so to get things started, I guess we ask every guest what led you to the circus.
So it was a pretty circuitous route, to be very honest. When I was younger, I actually enjoyed the circus and thought about being a clown in the circus. And that became a little more of a reality when I got thrown out of college in the late 1960s. And clowning actually became a job that I could have, much to the chagrin of my father, who had challenged me to get my life together. And he didn't quite see that doing some clowning was a way to get my life together. But his eyes only rolled more when I told him I was going to be a priest than when I told him I was going to do that piece after college. Anyway, I did that with some friends for about 2 years. That on and off, I wasn't really particularly good, and it wasn't consistent. But then I kind of forgot it and went on with my life, and that life eventually involved growing up enough to figure out that maybe I wanted to serve people more from the perspective of church ministry. So that's how I got involved in that. I was working in Eastern Kentucky in the Appalachian missions at the time, and I got to know a bishop, Bishop Michael Begley, who was the bishop of Charlotte, North Carolina. And in working with him, that kind of sparked something inside of me. And so I went one weekend from Eastern Kentucky to Charlotte, where he was the bishop, to talk to him about that. And I thought I was just going to talk to him, but he already had me signed up to go to seminary that next fall and study for Charlotte. So I kind of tumbled into seminary, and my life moved into ministry. And that went on and on and on for years and years. And all of that is to say that in 2009, many years later, I was assigned a missionary to come to my parish where I was pastor to preach for a weekend and collect money for the missions, which is a very common thing that's done in the Catholic Church. It's called the Mission Cooperative Program. And the person that I was assigned was Sister Dorothy Fabrice from the Circus and Travel and Show Ministry. And I think they assigned her to me because they knew a bit about my own background and figured I'd be more amenable than many of our other pastors to have her come in and do her thing. So anyway, she comes for the weekend, and we had 5 services on a weekend that she had to talk at. So between services, she was in my office, and I went to get her water or something. And I forgot that hanging in my office was a picture of me as a clown. And so at one point, when I brought a glass of
Oh,
water
wow.
in, she points her finger. It's always dangerous when a nun points their finger.
Oh yeah.
But she points her finger at the picture and she says, "Who's that?" And I had to say, well, that's me. At that point, it was something like 40 years ago, but I said, that's me. Had to kind of tell her my story. And she said, "Well, you should be doing this with us." And I kind of nodded and smiled and then went on with my life. But a week and a half later, a letter came in the mail from the Bishops' Conference in Washington, D.C., inviting me to come to a meeting in Sarasota, Florida that January, which was the annual meeting of the Circus and Traveling Show Ministry. So I went thinking it would be nice to meet people and kind of see what they do. And of course, I left that meeting by the end of the week with assignments to start doing circus ministry. So that's really how I tumbled into it, was because Sister Dorothy pointed a finger and I ended up going to a meeting, and a piece of my life that was very old and from long ago all of a sudden became my life again. So, through most of my priesthood from 2010 onward, at least 1 week a month, I was on the road with one circus or another while still a pastor. And then after I retired in 2020, that became more full-time. And then when Father Jerry died shortly after that, I was appointed his successor as a national circus chaplain. So it's been
So
full-time for the last 5 years, really.
so I got a
So that's how I got into
very nice.
this. I got tricked into it by a nun.
So my question is, let's let our audience know what is your how long is the mission been around, providing for circus performers, and where did it start?
So it really goes back to the 1920s. Actually, the very first circus chaplain was in the 1830s. He was a Methodist that
Oh,
Barnum
wow.
hired for 2 years, and then he went off and joined the newspaper staff. But the circus ministry had a formal start in 1927
Hmm.
in Sarasota, Florida. 1927 is when the Ringlings moved the winter quarters from Baraboo to Sarasota. And part of that was not just because of the cheap land that was available, but I think that at least John Ringling had an interest in helping develop this brand new kind of area down there. And in 1927, there was also a priest from St. Augustine, Florida, who was assigned to open a mission in Sarasota. And so the two of them, quite frankly, ended up meeting with each other. Uh, Charlie Elslander was the priest and became Monsignor eventually, but he opened the mission of St. Martha's in Sarasota. And that was on Fruitville, which was near the property that the Ringlings had purchased and were using for their winter quarters. So a relationship started early on because so many performers, especially from Europe, were Catholic in their background. That kind of became a pretty constant focus. And we know that by 1929, he was already heavily involved in like blessing the train on an annual basis before it would leave, and certainly being involved in the lives of performers when they were in their winter quarters. And that relationship continued as Ringling continued to spend time in Sarasota. And Charlie stayed there till he retired in the 1960s. I think it was 65 or maybe even 68, somewhere in there. So he was connected and providing circus ministry pretty much through that whole time, and it became formalized really, with Ringling, because he was kind of relied on a lot for a lot of different things. And at the same time, there were a group of sisters, the Little Sisters of Jesus, who also went out on the road. They were used to doing it in Germany, and when some sisters came to the States,
Oh, wow.
they wanted to follow up on that. So they started to work by traveling with circuses in the U.S. So from the late 20s on, this organization started to unfold and came under the jurisdiction of the American bishops. Eventually, it became a formal ministry of the whole church in the United States and is governed by the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops now.
Very nice.
Oh wow.
So you saying in 1927 is when they started blessing the train annually, and did that
Yeah, about
tradition happen?
1927, 1928.
And did that tradition keep all the way up until 2017?
It stayed as a regular tradition annually until the very last train went back to Florida. Yeah,
Very nice.
every year.
Wow.
And of course, when there were two trains, then
Two blessings.
um, um, two blessings a year. Yeah, depending on
Did
where the
you
trains
did
were.
you ever did you ever bless the gold unit too, or?
Well, the gold unit didn't have a train, but yeah, I blessed the gold unit. In fact, when I started in 2010, my very first encounter with Ringling was on the Blue Show because I had to do a baptism, a confirmation, and a wedding, like
Oh wow.
all like in one day. And then the next week, I was on the gold unit, and I ended up spending a fair amount of time initially with the gold unit. And I'll confess to you that gold unit was actually my favorite of the three units. I don't
Oh,
say that too
oh.
loud, and I know many people won't hear this, but I really liked the gold unit a lot, and I think part of it was because it was the beginning of my circus history. But yeah, we would bless the show, and then there would be. I remember the Lopez family at one point purchased new trucks for their act and for their families. I had to bless those, and that would happen a lot on the gold unit. But of course, they didn't have trains, so there was no formal blessing of the trucks or anything.
Okay. So,
It was really neat. I always enjoyed whatever it was that Catholics will bless anything. I mean, it's
yes.
kind of our
Uh,
tradition
you,
because we do believe the world's imbued with God's grace, but we'll
Sure.
bless anything. So it was always neat on the circus when there would be an occasion to have to do something like that, and sometimes it was at the beginning of the season. Sometimes it was after a circumstance or an issue. One time on the Blue Unit, while they were in winter quarters getting ready to go out for a new show, there was an accident in the Globe of Death. And one of the guys
ooh,
went over the top of his motorcycle, ended up in the hospital, broken jaw. But they wouldn't go back into the Globe until I came and blessed the Globe. So I was met one morning at the winter quarters by Habibi, who used to be on the floor crew,
Hmm.
and who was a Muslim who took care of getting us places for mass every time we were on Ringling. He was like our sacristan, even though we didn't share the same faith together. A great guy. But anyway, he met me and took me to the Globe and opened it for me. I had to go stand inside. He wasn't going to let me do it from outside. I had to go stand inside the Globe of Death. I had to bless that, and then he took me to bless all the motorcycles. They had two sets. I had to bless all of
This was
those.
the Lopez
And then
troop.
I went over to the hospital to visit with the guy who was injured and prayed with him and did an anointing as well before his surgery. But blessing stuff is pretty much what we do. And although we're Catholic, we take care of everybody. The Catholic Church is the only denomination that has a formal, regular, and ongoing ministry to circus people, and we've been doing it now about 100 years. So.
right, yeah.
And we take care of everybody. That's always kind of been our thing, is that we're not exclusively, just for us Catholics.
You
Well,
said that was the
well,
Lopez troop.
no, no, no. It was oh, I forget what name they were using, but they were mostly from Argentina.
Okay.
Lopez was High Wire,
That's right. That's right.
and the group was. I just don't want to share their names on
Sure,
without having
sure.
asked them ahead of time. But
Oh, no
No
problem.
I think
problem.
most of the guys were from Argentina.
Yeah, I do actually. So for the circus, did you have any? Was there a specific vestment for the circus?
So yeah, we did. We had a collection of vestments actually that the ministry owns. Um, they were made by various artists in wardrobe from different shows, not just from Ringling, but from other shows as well. And they would travel around with us. Father Jerry famously had his big stole with pockets and the big Ringling logo on the back of it. And I had a set of stoles that have embroidered circus pictures and clowns and performers, in the different colors. I have a set of those, which is what I use. But then there's a stack of other vestments that when we get together as a group, especially when we're in Sarasota for our annual meeting, we'll use those for Mass as well. And in fact, Father Dick Nodder, who works with me, was just presented with a beautiful handmade vestment from the folks on Hannaford. I gave that to him just this last year. It's a beautiful white vestment with all kinds of great
wow.
circus stuff on it. But
Very
yeah, they're
nice.
really treasured because of where they've come from. They come out of the tradition, and a lot of other people might think them quite gaudy, and maybe not something you'd see on a Sunday in a normal church. But heck, we're not a normal church, so that kind of doesn't matter to us, and they really are meaningful, from our perspective. So yeah, those vestments are what we use with great regularity. Yeah.
Very nice.
Oh, very good. Do you still travel around and bless other circuses?
Oh, oh yes.
Yeah, you
I
do.
happen to
Okay,
be
good.
home this month, which is kind of an anomaly, but just this year alone, I've already been to 17 shows, and Father Dick Nodder has probably been to the same, if not a few more. There are currently 41 traveling circuses in the United States right now,
Oh,
and so
wow.
we try and hit as many of them as we can. We have a third priest, Father Jeff Gubbiotti, who's out of Hartford, and he handles New England for us a lot. So he's helpful in that regard. But Dick and I kind of bounce all over the country in terms of both blessing shows, saying Mass on shows. I just, over Easter, I had baptisms out in California on Circus Vargas, and then down to Garden Brothers Circus. It was also out there at that point. I was in Miami earlier in the year. I had 5 baptisms on Circus Lena
Wow.
in Hialeah, and just did a baptism in Sarasota not too long ago, and I have another one coming up in about another month. So yeah, we're bouncing all over the place
So you said there was
to get around to the shows that we can.
so you said there was 41 circuses that y'all
41
guys.
this year, which is less than last year. There were 43 last year, 41 this year. Big Apple will open, well, it's going to open for a small run in Boston, but then open in November in New York. So that'll be 42. And there might be another one mixed in there somewhere. But yeah, that's the number of shows that are currently out on the road here in the United States. And that's not cirque shows or anything. That's traveling circus shows, 41 of them.
Very nice. Very nice. So what was your first thoughts like when you showed up to your first circus, like as a priest, to do a mass and to do blessings and to give confessions, and like what was that real thought process for you, like showing up like at the train tent, wherever it was at?
So it was actually in an arena, and it would have been in Greensboro, North Carolina, with the Blue Unit of Ringling Brothers. And the first person I met was Shandor, who was the boss clown on the Blue Unit at the time, and he kind of guided me around, and I had to find a place to do confessions because there were some people that wanted to do that. So at this arena, there was a smaller little area that had a kind of stage in it that I guess they used for smaller performances. And I ended up being able to, the only private space was kind of up on that little stage behind a little black curtain. So that kind of became the place where I sat myself down and where he directed people who wanted to celebrate confession to kind of come and do that. I was actually, to be honest, amazed that people came to celebrate confession. Out in the real world, it's like pulling teeth sometimes to get
Oh
people
yeah.
to really celebrate that sacrament. And I certainly didn't have high expectations that on the circus that would be something that people would be doing. When it was a 3-show day. It was a Saturday,
Mm.
and I certainly didn't think people would be running to do that. But I was actually amazed at the response of folks. And the same with Mass. We had Mass. It seemed to me, I remember it was in a corridor, and we used one of the light cases as an altar, and we had a pretty good, crowd for that gathering, even though we had to do it in like a slot of 22 minutes. I think I'm a pretty adaptable guy, but I was even amazed we did that in 22
Mm.
minutes in order to get people back to focus on things. I do remember Oscar Leendo was in the clown alley, and um, Oscar always wanted to come to service, but it was also usually the only time he could eat. So Oscar solved the problem by showing up, sitting in the back, eating his salad while we were having mess with it. I was just happy people were there, so that
I
kind
have
of
to write
worked for
that down.
me all the time, and I just remember I felt at home, to be very honest with you. I'm amazed that people were as receptive and welcoming, that we really are part of the family. And I guess it took me a little bit to get over that we're trusted, because circus people don't always trust
Oh no.
everybody they run into.
Oh
And
no.
and I was just amazed that it didn't take anything except certainly the reputations of those who have gone before me, and the history of this ministry. But it certainly didn't take much for me to be equally as accepted, and I really felt at home, and was very, very much became part of any show that I ended up walking onto. And before long, I was even welcome in the clown alley, which I really saw that as kind of a real blessing, that I could just go in and hang out in the alley, which you certainly know was not something anybody could
Oh
do
no.
on the show. So
Right,
to have that level of trust was a real blessing for me.
Very nice.
right on.
What would
What was one of
go
the?
ahead?
Sorry, go
No,
ahead,
go ahead.
buddy. What was one of the best places, the fondest memories you had holding services?
Oh wow! You know what? It was actually there's two. One was on the gold unit, and I can't remember where it was, but it was right as the gold unit was closing. I'm thinking it was like Cedar Rapids, Iowa, or something like that. Um, we had a general prayer service the day before Mass for everybody, kind of as a goodbye. We had put this little liturgy together because we wanted everyone to celebrate the end of the gold unit, and it was the most moving service that I remember. Again, circus people don't necessarily wear their emotions on their sleeve, and yet
Sure.
this was a very open, very vulnerable, very personal. We had a time for people to simply share kind of their own feelings and impressions, and people really did. And to see the level of commitment, not just to the prayer, but to each other, to what had unfolded on the show, that was a very moving and touching moment for me, and not one that I'll uh, easily forget. And then the other was also on the blue unit um, for the closing mass, um, as the show was closing.
Mm.
First of all, it was the largest crowd, I think, in circus history that showed up for that mass. But again, the fervor of individuals, and the intensity of being together, and recognizing the importance of this moment. That was also a very edifying kind of thing. But having said that, I'll also say, every time was unique. Every time had a positive light to it. I was always edified anytime I was on any show, doing any service at all, whether it was to celebrate sacraments. Like Sister Dorothy would organize the big sacrament stuff on Ringling Brothers, because she was on the show full time, and so we'd have 4 and 5 kids at a time rather than one at a time, which is what happens in most shows. So she'd organize this big thing on a dark day, and it'd be a lot of music and a lot of pomp and festivity, even though you're walking through camel dung to get through the ring to where the altar is. But um, and those were really nice. But equally as nice were the simple little ones, like in Zerbini's little tent on a folding table with everyone there. Those were always amazingly gratifying, beautiful experiences for me. Always have been, still are. They really energize me, give me life.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Well, being a circus priest, do you have any interesting pie stories? Did you ever pie anybody on their birthday?
So no, I never pied anybody on their birthday, although I attended a number of pies. A
Oh, nice.
particular one was when Jonathan Lee Iverson got pied on his birthday after having avoiding it for a number of years, and ended up getting pied individually by every person in the clown alley. Had a pie
Oh my gosh.
for Jonathan. It was really quite a beautiful sight to behold.
Wow.
And I personally tried always to avoid being pied. I just didn't want to be in the spotlight. I also don't really celebrate my birthday. But one time, I was out to dinner with one of the PR people from Ringling. We were in New Orleans, and went out to dinner. And since Feld was paying for it, I was game. So
Sure, why not?
we're at dinner, and we're talking about the future of the ministry. And I said to this person, I said, you know, I'll tell you something. Today is my 65th birthday. And I said, and I'm the youngest person doing this ministry, which was my point. My point was to focus on that rather than the fact that it was my birthday. And then, of course, unbeknownst to me, the texts went back and forth that it was my 65th. And he organized with the clown alley, apparently, to be ready when we got back from dinner for a pie. And, you know, the best pier, I must say, was Shandor on the Blue Unit. He was a
Assassin.
pie pro, and I was duped completely. I was so duped. I usually have a keen eye about stuff, and it was he and Andrew and Scarlett and I forget who else was there, but they just were great. We walked through a curtain. They were great at distracting me, and the next thing I know, there's a pie in my face, and he's moving it around my face and then up onto my head, and it was a great pieing. It really was. But that was my experience with this band of clowns in cahoots with a PR person to get me pied on my 65th birthday.
Yeah.
And then when it was over, because Chandra knew that I had done a little clowning, he just looked at me and said, "You know what to do. Go clean up." so I had to find my way back to the clown alley, get into the bathroom, and clean myself off. But that was my big pie experience. But my 65th birthday.
Amazing.
I'll say a few things about the train because it's on I just kind of clicked into my mind.
Sure.
My first experience with the train on Ringling was the Blue Unit. I can't remember where it was now, but it was Halloween, and it was the haunted clown car. That was my first encounter at the train. So
1 second,
that's
Father.
Context for you of how my eyes were open to
So
life on the train in the circus.
to our audience, we have not revealed that just yet. We were going to do that on our actually
Next episode.
yeah, next episode.
That's great.
Is with Julia.
Oh, good.
So, but yeah, so you're going to give them
this was much earlier than Julia, but yeah.
Well, true. We just haven't released that information out to the public yet on our show.
No problem.
So that's why I was
No
like,
problem.
I mean, no, I'm going to mention it here. I think it's great, but it just popped in my
You'll
head.
find out what it really is next time.
Yeah, exactly. You give them the sneak peek, and then Julia finishes.
There you go. There you go. And then the other thing was a party at the train, which, the food was great, the camaraderie was great, the drinks were great. I mean, that was always a neat thing to be able to do, was to be down at the train for a party. Where I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and where I live is actually the area where the train used to park in Charlotte, which you wouldn't recognize anymore. It's not a bunch of train tracks anymore. It's all apartment buildings that have been built up over the last 8 to 10 years. But if you're lucky, before this is over, you might even hear a train horn in the distance, because the tracks are right up the block from there.
Yeah.
What's left of the tracks is right up the block. But when I came looking for a place to get an apartment, this is an old cotton mill that I happen to live in, and all of the dive bars and the tattoo shops that used to be along the street where the train was, they've all been replaced now with high-rise apartment buildings. But it's a nice area of the city to be in. But that's still a memory I hold, is I would come often and take the clown alley back to I lived over in Belmont, which is about 25 minutes from where the train was, and we'd have dinner usually the night before opening at my place, and then bring them back over to the train. But but now I live in that area where I remember coming all the time in order to be at the train. So there's some good train memory in relationship to that.
Very nice.
And I also have a memory of it blessing the train once with Father Jerry, and we were in Tampa, so it was at the beginning of the season, and it was the red unit, and Tom Dillon.
Sorry you didn't.
Oh, there you go. Tom Dillon would be the one who would drive us up and
Yeah,
down
Tom.
in the truck to bless the train. And as we were with these big, huge branches of palm that he would cut down, and we dip them in buckets of water that we had blessed, and throw them all over the cars of the train. And as we're coming along, it was late in the morning, and apparently the folks in wardrobe hadn't started work yet, because all of a sudden at the doorway of one of the cars appears Claudia Porter.
Claudia.
And she's wearing a red nightgown, which was actually kind of a revealing nightgown. And she leans out and sees us coming. And of course, we already have our branches up and we're whipping water. And she gets soaked from the water. And as we pass by, I look back and, she's kind of trying to make the sign of the cross, which she doesn't really know how to do. She's trying to make the sign of the cross. And at the same time, she's wiping the water from obvious places that are all over it. And Jerry turns to me and he says, "She needed that."
Oh my!
But that's a great blessing memory.
I'm pretty sure I have a memory. I think I've seen you at least twice. See, I started on the Blue. It was a train run. I think it was coming from BC into Maryland, maybe. It was a very short train run.
Yeah, that one makes sense.
And the train was running very, very late.
Yes.
On Blue, where I started on Blue, I was they call me the pump guy. I was the guy who cleaned the waste out of the train, if you will.
Yes, I remember.
Okay, I remember seeing you there. And I do remember you on the red doing the back of the truck. I might have been there when I can't remember. But I do remember seeing you.
Yeah.
But have you ever been on the train run or stayed on a train?
So I stayed on the train when it was stationary a few times in different places. When there was a space available and I was hanging out for a few days, I was able to stay on the train. Usually Rebecca or really Lolise would often engineer that for me. But the funny thing is, I was supposed to ride on I think it was the red unit. It was going to be the red unit. I was going to ride to the West Coast and up California with the show in 2017. And I had actually gotten permission from Feld in like November, and that was all set for me to do. And then they announced the closing of the show in January. So in May, when it all closed down, there was no summer trip to the West Coast. So I never got to spend time on the train, but I was supposed to actually stay there for a few weeks. I was going to get off at some point in California and then rent a car and then hit some of the California shows, that were around there as well. That was the plan, but that never happened. So my experience of the train was always when it wasn't rocking, only when it was kind of stationary.
Oh.
I'll sleep you over again.
Father.
Oh yeah. Well, my dad worked on the railroad, so I've had experiences of trains and sleeping on trains, and so yeah, that's always been a special part of my own life. So.
I believe you went to Wilkes-Barre in 2016, I believe.
I did.
That's where we met, and you actually gave me a rosary. So.
Yeah, I used to carry them around. There's this group of people in the parish that I was at the time would put those together in these little plastic bags, and I'd carry them around, and people would ask for them, or when I said Mass, I'd kind of put them out sometimes on the table, and was always amazed that people wanted them and asked for them, and so you asked for it, I guess, and I must have given it to you.
Yep. I actually still have it today. Thank you.
There you go.
Do
Good
you still
news.
hand those out today?
I do.
Awesome, awesome. Well, we're gonna figure out a way to get you some.
Oh, thank you.
No
That's
problem.
great. Good news. Good. Good.
So,
Good.
all right.
Do you have any other fond moments or memories with the train? It's not necessarily just with mass or anything, just plain good
Well,
times.
you do know that we run this as small, or the ministry is part of this small RV park in Seffner, Florida, that we have for circus and other traveling show
Yes.
folks who are retired and who may not be able to
Oh,
afford, a regular mobile home park. So on a sliding scale, we provide now 15 spaces for people to bring their RVs in, and they
Someone
can.
donated that land.
No, we
Oh, y'all
we
purchased it?
purchased it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we did some fundraising and did some purchasing, and uh, uh, and then since then, people have circus folks have given us in estates and stuff enough to kind of continue to sustain it. Um, but we run this. It's called Show People's Winter Quarters. So we run this in Seffner, Florida, and in the middle of the property is the old Red Unit's Trainmaster car.
uh,
Feld gave us that car when they disbanded the train. We had to move it from Feld up to Seffner, which it was like a $10,000 investment
Oof.
to get it
oh,
there. And again, it was Tom Dillon who just really helped engineer that whole thing for us. But we've turned it into it's the car's been split into three sections. So there is a community center, which is the largest part, at least half the car. There is a library
oh
there, and
wow.
there's also a meditation space, a quiet space that's dedicated to Father Jerry's memory. That's also on the train as well, and a functioning toilet. Um,
Yeah,
so it really serves the community well. In fact, in the midst of the hurricanes, that's the place where the residents go uh,
The shelter.
when there's a hurricane or high winds. They go to the train
oh,
car. It's the most stable thing on the property, and it
yeah,
actually has been a godsend for them in terms of that. But it's always a good, and we hold our board meetings at least half of the time in the train car there in Seffner. But we have this ongoing memory of the train just because we have that car on
yeah.
property. And I've also just learned that Sherwin-Williams made a special paint for Ringling Brothers to paint those cars that apparently is like graffiti-proof paint, and I know
What?
that because it's time to paint the car again. So we're looking at how we do that. And so
No
if you have
way.
any contacts at Sherwin-Williams, let me know. Um, but we
That,
knew it was a special paint that they created just for Feld to use on the trains, and that silver color is their thing. So
The
we're
old
trying really
silver
hard
slug.
to kind of try and. What's that?
Said the old silver slug.
silver
Yeah,
slug.
there you go. Yeah, yeah. So the
Are you
train is more than a memory. It's kind of part of my story still because we
oh,
still have it and use it there
So,
on the property in
so
Seffner
this
for
community is for
folks in town.
retired circus performers and people
Right.
that don't
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
anywhere to go.
Back in the day, people didn't have Social Security. They didn't have good retirement plans, and if you try and get a mobile home slot anywhere around Sarasota, you're paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month
Hmm.
just for the hookup. And so we ended up with this property that has 15 hookups on it. And like I said, we do it on a sliding scale based on people's income, and provide the utilities and space for them to be there and kind of live out their retirement. Our oldest resident is in her 90s. She's an old trapeze artist from
oh
England.
wow.
Um, and the property itself used to be owned by a woman who took care of cats on the show, tigers. In fact, it's where she would house her tigers,
Oh, wow.
and the old building where she would cut up the meat to feed them, and all of that's still kind of on the property. In fact, it's one of the reasons we took the property was because it's zoned for animals, and if people still had animals from their act, they would you can't really, in a lot of places can't have them, but there you can.
Oh,
So
very
we
nice.
were able to kind of find a place that could still be something for people if that was their deal. So the old trainmaster's car just sits right there in the middle of the property and gets used pretty regularly by the folks.
Very nice.
Were you allowed to keep the Were you allowed to keep the markings on it?
Yes, we were. We were allowed to keep the
Oh wow,
logos and everything else on it. So yeah, they were very good to us
that's
about that.
amazing.
They also gave us about um, 6 or 7 of the white trucks, the cars that storage cars that. So we have
Oh
those
yeah, that
around the
can take.
property
Yeah.
too that we can
Wow.
store things in, and we actually
The
rent those out to
wagons.
folks who want it. So,
Well,
Yeah, the wagons.
wagons, thank you.
maybe
Yep.
we can arrange a time to meet you down there to do some interviews.
You know that's not a bad idea. I'll be back down in October. Maybe we can work something out
Okay. Yeah.
to
Yeah.
hook
Absolutely.
us
I'll
up
get
with
with you
something.
Yeah.
after.
Excellent, good news. So
So
that's kind of another fond kind of circus train memory for me. There
Yeah.
was also
That's
one time, I think it was in South Carolina, that I was getting to the venue where the circus was going to be, but the train was actually delayed. And I pulled up to this railroad stop, and the things came down for the train to pass, and it was the circus train. So I got
no
out of the
kidding. Huh.
car because there were people hanging out
out the
at the ends of the
vestibules.
car and the vestibule. So then they're going by pretty slow. So I was able to have conversations with people. I'll see you in about 20 minutes over there. And,
Uh,
it's,
uh,
Yeah, that was always fun being on the train when we go by through little cities, be able to wave and
yeah.
see people. It made their day. It was nice.
Mm, mm, mm.
So,
Good news.
great.
you got anything?
Well, go
All right.
go for it.
So, are there any other circus part of the ministries? Like you said, you're helping housing performers or stuff like that. I mean, what else does your ministry cover? Um, we're curious.
So besides the normal stuff that the ministry would do, so we do services, sacraments, we do counseling. I used to joke that I think we were the best HR department that Feld ever had, um, because we would often be the ones who would catch a lot of the stuff that was going on in people's lives, and we would be the ones that could listen to them and help them sort things out and kind of stand with people and that sort of thing. And that's a still a very common part of what we do. When I was recently out in California, with the stuff that's going on with immigration, some shows or people are not traveling the whole distance because they're afraid of ICE, and so trying to kind of balance that stuff is sort of eked into some of what we do in the ministry as well. But we also do have a burial fund, and there's sometimes, sadly, circus people who don't have family. They've come from Europe. The last guy was a clown from Hungary who died, and no one even knew he died. And it was Peggy Williams who stumbled on his cremains somewhere, and
Mm,
so she got the wheels moving to start to get him buried, and that led to the establishment of this. We have a burial fund now for circus folks who are indigent and don't have any family to care for them. We'll make sure that they get a proper burial. And there's a cemetery in Gibsonton that mainly for carnival people, but they'll also allow our folks to kind of be buried there. So we work out a thing with them and are able to kind of provide a decent, dignified burial for folks that may not otherwise be able to have that happen
very nice.
for them. So we take care of people on the road. We take care of people when they're off the road, and we take care of people when there ain't a road anymore. That's kind of the 3 things that we're able to do in the ministry right now.
Is there anywhere that someone can, help out if they want to? Like a link that we can leave down below?
Yes, if you go to our website, which is circusministry.com, there's an opportunity to donate to the ministry, and that would be just designate it for the burial fund, and that's all you would need to do.
Okay. Awesome. All right.
We
Well,
take anybody's money. because that we survive. The bishops of the United States are very good about giving people jobs to do. They're
Yes.
not really good about giving you money to do the jobs, but they're really good about giving you a job. So just like Sister Dorothy years ago, we still go to some churches around the country every year to beg for collection money, and that basically forms our budget every year. And those things are getting harder and harder because in a lot of places there are fewer and fewer churches, and we're not as glamorous as foreign missions in Africa, and so we get to the bottom of a lot of people's lists. In fact, I've had dioceses say to us, "Is this a joke?" They don't really even get the fact that what we do affects the lives of thousands of people,
Yes.
in a particular way of life, and they just don't see it in the same way. There's a need for a real education there. So we have to rely on people who at least think what we're doing is worthwhile in order to get the budget money we need to survive each year. So anything that people do to help us, we're always grateful for.
Awesome. Would be the to you, is it a big difference going to a big arena or what they would classify as a mud show somewhere in a little tent in a parking lot somewhere? Is there a big difference in going to set up for mass, or you just look at it the same every?
Well, there are some things that are the same. I will say that when you deal with an arena, you're dealing with a lot more infrastructure, and that can sometimes be frustrating. So, like in an arena, you don't know when you go in where you're going to be having mass. That's you go in kind of blind, and you have to ferret that out. And for example, when I would go on Ringling, I'd always show up on a Thursday, and I'd
Mhm.
be there through Sunday. I'd leave before loadout because who wants to be around for that? But I'd go in on Thursday, and the sole purpose of going in on Thursday was two reasons. One was for the cast and seats meeting, but the second one was to walk around the arena to find out who was where.
This
You really have to orient yourself to what dressing rooms are where's the clown alley, the admin trailer, and stuff like. I just couldn't. You had to look for those things to kind of get them. So you always had to orient yourself in every new arena because they were all different and they were all spread out, and that was never fun, and it
never
wasn't always
designed the
easy.
same.
Exactly, yeah, yeah. Whereas in a tent, of course, it's one, you're always going to be in the tent and usually in the ring, so that's always easy. It's the only thing is to find who's your contact on that show, and those rarely changed because many of those mud shows were family focused, and it was always the same family or extended family that you'd kind of be dealing with as a first contact. So it was always easy to kind of work that out. And I'd always go the day or two before to see the show, and usually have a meal with folks afterwards, hang out in the back lot, and from that you get a sense of where things are going to be and how it's going to work. And there was less walking. As I get older, it's harder for me to walk.
Mm.
So a lot less walking on a mud show than there is inside of an arena.
Oh yeah, arenas are.
But those are logistics would be the biggest issue and then communication on a mud show. It doesn't take much to communicate with everybody that one, you're there, and that two, there's going to be mass and what time it's going to be. In an arena show, it's you got to put up signage, and you got to
Tell
remind
people.
people, and yeah, it's like it's a major production to and then you still get, oh, I didn't realize you were going to be here this week. Well, what the heck. but so those would be the big differences, those kind of infrastructure size things. I do find, on the new Ringling show, they're so much more compressed. They're only working Friday through Sunday in terms of performances, and that's even more intense in terms of where you're going to be and when you're going to be able to do it, and there's less time to kind of work all that out. And there's been a few times where actually I've just said, let's get a room at the hotel where the cast is staying because they're all in hotels now.
Yeah.
Let's just get a room there and have mass there. Is a heck of a lot less complicated than trying to work it out with the arena. But Rob is really good and is
Oh,
great to
Rob
work
Lang.
with.
We
But
love
anyway,
Rob Lang.
yeah, it's just the infrastructure issue that's more compressed because their schedule is more compressed.
Yeah.
That would be the big difference.
Well, I've heard that from behind the scenes. We've heard that it's a very strict schedule, the new Ringling,
Yeah.
in form of like just everything's like very timed out and just has to, so. Um, have you had any? Do you? Oh, okay. Let me rephrase this. Do you do any Latin services like when you go out to
No,
these? No. Okay.
no, not part of my background, not part of any background I've seen on any show. The majority of what we do, however, is in Spanish.
Okay.
That's one change I've seen in the last 10 years is that you can't do this ministry anymore if you don't speak Spanish.
Oh. Okay.
About 70% of folks involved in circuses around the U.S. are Spanish speaking.
Oh, wow.
All right. All right. You got any?
Yeah. How, since we're doing a podcast, it's perfect. How has technology and social media and stuff like that affected the ministry?
Yeah, I mean, technology and social media have been helpful to us in a variety of ways. For example, during the whole COVID thing, when there weren't any shows around,
Mm.
we were really able to use social ministry to stay connected. Both Father
Oh,
Dick
yeah, that'd
and
be perfect.
I had Mass on a weekly basis for circus folks using FaceTime and other social media stuff in order to do that, to keep connected to those communities. We right now also use there is a site called Formed, Formed. It's used a lot around the Catholic Church. It's usually a subscription service by diocese, so it costs a lot of money to kind of hook into it. We actually were able to get a deal for the Circus Ministry, kind of help the Bishops' Conference strong armed a little bit to help us with that. But we now are able to allow our circus folks through our website to sign up for Formed. But what's important about us is not just the resources that are there, but that's how we do preparation for baptism, preparation for confirmation, preparation for marriage. They're all based in those social media outlets that allow us to not have to make extra trips to a show in order to be present to do it in person. And then we follow up with FaceTime stuff, or being able to kind of communicate that way and personally, to kind of finish up the preparation. So it's really made our ability to be present to groups of people in various places much more intense and much more accessible because of the use of the media. And of course, most circus folks are younger, and so they're pretty adept at this whole thing, and that just makes it even easier for us to step
Yeah,
into it.
true.
Back maybe in 2011 and 2012, I don't know if any of you recall this, but there were a few Lents where we went around, especially with Ringling, and we had developed QR codes that people could click on, and it would take you to things like praying the Stations of the Cross, or some other Lenten reflection. And Sister Dorothy and I would go around arenas sticking those things up all over, during Lent, so people had some Lenten stuff to do. That was kind of the beginning of our use of that social media. Now it's so much easier with just hooking people into our site and letting them kind of discover it themselves from there. So it's just a matter of going to the website, putting in your email address in the formed registration area, and that hooks you right up.
So, would you say Formed is like the Catholicism Google, because it has so much wealth of information that you can research and dive into in that format?
Yes, but it's media based in that it's programmatics. It's not written information or readable information. It's all video, and it's all
Like
it's interactive in that way.
theologians speaking, giving conferences.
Yeah, but it's really designed for everyday people. There's a lot of good children's programming on it.
Oh yeah.
There's a whole series called Brother Francis. It's an animated series. We use that as the basis for religious education for most children on the shows. It becomes a real great opportunity for them on a regular basis to be exposed to the faith and realities about the faith and things that are important in terms of their own understanding of who they are. And so that becomes foundational to everything. So before a kid would prepare for First Communion, they'd have to go through all that stuff first. And then there's some explicit preparation for First Communion that's also done using stuff that's on that site as well. And then we'll do face-to-face stuff to do the more immediate preparation for the sacrament.
Very nice.
So it's really been helpful to enter into this age of availability of media and media usage. It's been a blessing to us, and we've definitely seen it in the last 5 years.
Awesome.
Very good.
So do you have any favorite troops, performers, or acts or clowns that stuck out over the years with you?
Probably, but I'm not going to tell you who they
Oh,
I still work with a lot of these people. I'm not going to get them mad at me.
okay.
Certainly, there are masters who stick out, and up and comers who you see and you say, yeah, they're going to go far. And from the perspective of clowning, which is maybe the only thing I think I can speak about much at all. Again, people like Chandor, who are just classic good clowns and good sense of timing, and people Chase Culp is a younger clown who's, I think, really good and well immersed in what clowning is ultimately all about. And so I certainly have ideas about those sorts of folks, but we also have people who work closely with us. I'm thinking of Vicky Zlizek and her family, and Alex Petrov, and guys and gals who've been around for a long time in the business and are just good, solid people to go to. Alex and Luis Vargas and their kids, and just those circus legacies that have been around for a long time, and you just kind of see them generation after generation still connected to this wonderful art form. And I find that intriguing and exciting to be a part of and connected with. And so yeah, those folks are certainly along the way. But I can say I've never really been disappointed with circus people. They're some of the most genuine people that there are. Not always the nicest people, but the most genuine people that there are circus folks. And for that reason alone, working with them has been for me a real privilege and a blessing.
Have you ever got to travel outside of the U.S. to be with other circuses?
So yes, in Italy a few times I was able to get to a few shows,
Wow.
and also attended the Italian Circus Festival 1 year, and also I've been to Monte Carlo a few times with the competitions that exist there, and able to see shows there. Every year in Monte Carlo in January, the circus ministers from around Europe, they meet there. They have a full day meeting, usually on Monday of the week that the competition is taking place. And I was able, at least 1 year, the second year I wasn't able to, but the first year I was there, I was able to attend the meeting with them that whole day, which was really kind of eye-opening. A very ecumenical group, and a lot of them are able to do a lot more because they have a lot more money to do what they do. That was my biggest takeaway was, oh, these people have money, and we really don't. But it was good to be able to encounter that and kind of get connected with other folks around Europe who do this same kind of work and ministry. And then on Monday night at Monte Carlo every year, there is a big ecumenical prayer service in the ring where they mix prayer and scripture with performance. It's really quite a very intriguing thing that they do every year with the circus ministers. And I'm amazed at the number of people who come from all over that area of France and Monte Carlo to witness that and be part of that each year. But yeah, I do get a chance to do a little bit of that kind of international stuff.
Very nice.
Wow, that's very cool.
And of course, Scarlett wanted me to come to Canada this year, which I never got there. But maybe if we go out again, I'll find a city to find them in.
Very cool. Do you have uh, a story from the ministry that had a profound impact on you?
Yes. Um, I was with Ringling, and I forget what season it was. It might have been the 144th or the 145th. I'm not quite sure what year it was. But anyway, um, I had not seen the show yet that year, so I always enjoy going out for pre-show. I just love standing down in the arena just to watch people as they
Right?
encounter what
Yeah.
goes on in pre-show. I always enjoy doing that, so I'd always go out and just stand against the rail and watch pre-show. And I was doing that this one time, and then decided to go up to my seat. And the seat that they had given me was like a VIP seat in the first row, which that was nice. Sometimes I got that, sometimes I didn't. But this was one of those, and it was the very first row. So I'd go to my seat, and I'm sitting down, and behind me there's a woman, and her husband and I think grandchild were still out on the floor. And there was something, it wasn't the bouncy house, or it might have been, something was in the ring, and she thought it was obstructing her view, and she started complaining loudly that these are terrible seats. She's not going to be able to see anything. And I turned around to assure her. I said, "Oh, no, that'll be gone. And these are great. Trust me, these are great seats that you're sitting in." And I'm wearing my big Ringling ID that has my picture, and it says Circus Chaplain
Right.
on it, and big collar on. I mean, it's like pretty obvious she can trust me. So anyway, I turned back around, and then there's this little uh, kerfuffle. And then she leans over and taps me on the shoulder again, and she says to me, um, "Excuse me, sir, but I dropped my purse down under the seat. It had fallen down, I guess. Can you get it for me?" And I said, "Well, no, but I'll get that person with the vest on over there who works for the arena. They would be able to help you with that. I wouldn't be able to do that for you." And she looks at me puzzled and says, "Well, then what exactly do you do here?" And like I said, I'm big collar, big ID, and I said, "Well, I'm
Wow.
I'm the circus chaplain. I'm the chaplain for the circus." And she looks me straight in the eye, and she says to me, "Why would people like this need someone like you?" And
What?
yeah, yeah, and
Wow.
it was a moment where I realized that I had heard about the kind of prejudice that people can have sometimes
Oh
for
yeah.
circus folks that led to the I'd said earlier, circus people are sometimes a little reticent about who they let into their lives, and but I'd heard that came from a history, but I honestly thought that had kind of gone away. And here, in this arena, sitting right behind me, was a perfect example that was still the case. And I controlled myself enough to just say to her, "Ma'am, you have no idea, what you're even talking about." What I wanted to do was haul off and slap her, to be blatantly honest with you. Uh, but what it led me to was a moment of really appreciating the preciousness of the. At the same time this is happening, as soon as I turn around, the clowns are coming out to do their blow off before the show starts, and just the moment of her saying that, and then seeing these folks out there, it was just this moment of just how precious these performers are and what it is they bring into this arena every single performance. It was a very deep, moving, kind of focus for me that came from. It was really, I think, a very sad, kind of one-dimensional notion of what circus might be. That's a really profound thing I've never really forgotten.
Wow.
Say, wow, yeah.
So so you're the traveling chaplain for the circuses, for circuses, and so do you think that every entertainment that travels like this profession that could they benefit from having a traveling chaplain?
I do think so. However, having said that, the circus is still unique in that the circus is still the only form of entertainment where people travel pretty much full time,
Hmm.
where they travel with their families and extended families. It's not just performers. Like an example is the new Ringling show. They don't travel with families anymore. It's just performers and crew. So that's different than what classical circus is and always has been. So there's a different need, I guess, on circuses than one finds in other performance venues. Could they benefit from it? Absolutely. But I do think that circus remains unique in that you're still a traveling community, it's still grounded
Hmm.
in a different way than other performances are. And for that reason, needing to support that way of life and uh, bring our skills into it is still very different than being present to other traveling shows and traveling communities. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. Okay.
All right. Well, folks, we're coming down to that time. So before we go, Father, what was that website again? Go ahead and give people that website where they can.
www.circusministry, all one word, circusministry.com.
There it is, folks. You heard it right there. You want to go there, check it out. Can they leave donations on that
You
website?
sure
Yep.
can.
All right.
And
You
we'll
can leave donations.
and we'll figure out some kind of getting you some rosaries soon.
Thank you. That's great. I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
And one more thing before I close it out. Father, can you do one more closing prayer for us?
How about a blessing? I use the blessing
That'll work.
from, it's called the Aaronic blessing from the Hebrew scriptures, but it's also the blessing that St. Francis of Assisi always used with those who are close to him. So
Okay.
may the Lord
Thank you.
bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine down on you and have mercy on you. May God turn his kindness to you and give you his peace. And may the blessing of Almighty God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit descend on you and remain forever. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very
Good
much. You heard
news.
it there, folks. With that said, thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our guests. And until next time, we'll see you down the road.
Down the road.